Apparently no promotion and no move to another company. We'll go ahead and stick with GSK for now. I'm afraid this presentation might be a little bit out of step with the narrative that we've set aside for this afternoon. It does go into from desktop to browser, which has to do with the narrative of applications that GSK has used regarding ChemAxon applications that we've used and deployed, and our intent to move those applications from the desktop installations to a browser-based approach, which is very much aligned with what Plexus is trying to do. So back in 2009, we began using ChemAxon tools across enterprise systems. And I want to outline that we've increased our adoption of those tools and shown the trend of moving away from desktop installations towards the web, and highlighted the touch points that you've seen earlier, nicely done and demonstrated up here, for the Plexus components, in particular compound registration, the library design, and of course Plexus Connect, or what it's called before, Instant JChem Web, pick a name. And while we haven't completely gone away from the desktop applications, we do have a little teaser on a piece that we're interested in where we are still enhancing some of our desktop applications with the help of ChemAxon professional services. We'll go to a little bit of a background, the story behind at least GSK's implementation of Instant JChem, how we got to the point we're at now, and a background on compound registration. Also, the fact that we are still, again, leveraging the existing tools to build something that looks very much like what we just saw from Danielle, which was the document to database to Plexus. In our case, it's a Socrates search. And building chemistry capabilities into existing desktop tools like Spotfire. And finally, the alignment that we hope to see with the Plexus roadmap, moving from desktop to web. So, starting back in 2009, we began deployment of Instant JChem. We rolled out the old 5.6 version in 2011, which involved migrating 200 of the 400 ISIS HViews. Oh, that was fun. And we managed to use some bespoke tools that we developed in-house for migrating from a test database to production and vice versa. This is generally seen as useful in an enterprise environment where you have a lot of projects and you do have a dev or a test and a production environment. This allows you to do that kind of work. We did have some pain points. All our databases, and there were several of them, were based in the UK. US users didn't like the performance that they saw from IJC, so we had to use Citrix. No one was particularly pleased by that, but it did generate the performance that we were looking for. Soon thereafter, there was ChemAxon organized a cross-pharma prioritization of the IJC requirements, got some feedback from various groups, and used that towards the development of their product. GSK followed very soon thereafter with an uplift to 5.7.2.1 in 2012. And last year, we took our first cut at seeing the JChem web browser. It showed promise. It showed some good speed on some of the forms, and it was a little unstable on others. Mea culpa here, our database structure was still not in any better shape than it was in 2009, and so therefore we saw some of the same problems, but it was probably mostly down to the messiness of the data architecture of the database underneath. However, we still would look for more elegant solutions for joining up multiple data sources in Instant JChem. This year, we finally bit the bullet, and yes, I know, we've been on 5.7 for some time, and just this summer we're moving up to 6.2. Don't beat us up too much for it, but we are now using ChemAxon services to migrate to the 6.2 version of Instant JChem, and at the same time using the professional services to develop this test to production. They call them the admin tools. We do as well. You saw that demonstrated earlier. That's something we asked for specifically. This allows us to use their tools to copy from a test database to a production and vice versa. But it also allows you to clone projects based on a template and to apply security parameters from one project to another. very useful from an administrative perspective. 6.2 is admittedly faster than 5.7, no question there, but we still have UK databases and we still have US users, thus still using Citrix. All the more reason to get off this thick client and onto an n-tiered architecture, which allows our US users to see this without pain. So I'm going to take a little sidebar to the next product, which is the compound registration, or small molecule registration. March of 2011, we began a collaboration with ChemAxon, originally wanting to do this as software as a service. Well, legal didn't like that, meaning they didn't want to see our compound registry outside of the company. That's usually how it works with large pharma. So inevitably, they moved it back into the firewall, and ChemAxon were still able to develop the first pass of, or the phase 1 of the compound registration product. We ended up migrating 6 million records of our compound registry over. And phase 1 essentially allowed chemists to register compounds, and as long as they met certain relatively simple rules, it would automatically be registered within the compound registry without a registrar having to take a look at it. This was seen as a streamlining of the process, but if there were more complex business rules, or if there were any problems, they still needed to seek the help of a registrar who had access to more powerful tools. Phase 2 was moving those tools, ripping them out of the registrar's hands and giving them to the chemists, to the medicinal chemists who were going to register the compounds themselves. So if there's a problem with a compound, fix that compound. Well, this was seen as a viable product for ChemAxon, and they indeed delivered, I think I have it as mid-2013, but I think the first release was late 2012, not entirely sure. But anyway, what you see now today is compound registration. And in fact, I've got some recent and new news to report on that. When we delivered it within GSK, our target was to have 70% of compounds registered directly from the chemist without a registrar's input. In fact, it's closer to 84%. We had 250 plus chemists register compounds themselves, again, without the assistance of a registrar. And yes, there's been a little bit of an increase in post-registration modification, that is, fixing small problems, but that's a very small increase, and we've got that mostly handled through training. Despite this pretty significant process change, we had very few problems with the rollout. Been pretty smooth. There's one little thing down here. You probably already got this one fixed. Just someone was telling me that the peptide conversions from the ELNB CDX format doesn't maintain orientation or bond lengths, but again, I'm sure you've got that covered. So, in addition to those two Plexus touch points, we continue to leverage the tools that we started with in 2009, that is the JChem suite, or the toolkit and cartridge capability, to build upon the GSK Enterprise Search Engine. And if this looks really similar to some of the stuff you've seen earlier, no big surprise there. We presented something at BioIT in 2013, won an innovation award for it. Essentially, the system, it crawls all the major repositories throughout GSK using an HP autonomy search engine, and then extracts pieces of information there, chemistry, genetics, target, all sorts of different annotations or pieces from the databases, the files, from Documentum repositories, SharePoint, and pulls them into an Oracle database with a ChemAxon-powered index. So this allows for you to do a substructure search across, basically all across GSK. We also had the ability to do reaction search, but business really wasn't all that interested in it. Except they did want to be able to search electronic lab notebooks reactions, and those are included for the indexing. And again, JChem libraries were used both for the format conversions and for the image rendering. So this has been used for things that we never really anticipated. I mean, even though this came from essentially early stage, and up to development, this has been used all the way up to patents. I mean, basically, we just threw all the sources in there, indexed them, and I actually want to bring this challenge to you, and I mean ChemAxon and to those out here. Indexing them and finding them is the easy part. Finding the more relevant responses and culling through those thousands of results is the hard part. So you've got thousands of documents and a list. What do you do next? So just a couple options. Want to throw those out there. We considered faceting. If you've looked at, say, Amazon's site, when you come up with search results, you get on the left-hand side, you get facets like by vendor, by price, by something. We started doing this by data source because each person has a different idea of what is relevant to them. So that's your next challenge. You get all the results back. What do you do next? All right, so it's not all web. There are still, believe it or not, desktop applications. And we're going to continue to use them. Oftentimes, we'll use them for heavy analytics. Spotfire is our workhorse for visualization. So we called up, well, we went to do a version upgrade from Spotfire 3.2 to 6.0 and found out that the bespoke GSK Spotfire structure visualizer broke. Well, we weren't all that interested in rewriting a new one, so we called up ChemAxon, and ChemAxon Services put together a plug-in replacement that replaced all of the pieces of the bespoke tool rather elegantly and rather nicely. So essentially, it allows you to, everywhere you see a smiles, whether it be in a column, table cell, plot label, tooltips, anywhere, just render that as a structure. So converts the smiles to a picture. And then there's grid visualization of the structure. So I'll show a quick picture of that. Allows you to, when you select some data points, the smiles column of those data points shows up in a grid view, allows you to cherry pick. If you select multiple smiles columns, those can show up as, say, R groups within that grid visualization. And so here's some examples of how this looks. On the left-hand side, you see that grid view on the bottom, which is the selected data points. The yellow indicates that that's the one that's highlighted, or that's one of the ones that I've cherry-picked. The highlighted one is the one that my mouse is currently hovering over. I've selected some of them. You'll notice that there's tooltips and labels popped up. You know, the structures show up. So it's really elegant. It was pretty simple, I guess, for them to implement, and they did it very, very quickly. Good, high-quality product. So what's next? All right, you've gotten all the, so basically, I'm not stealing any thunder because they've shown us all the cool stuff, but this is where we saw Plexus going and what we hoped to align with. So we're hoping to align with them on the roadmap and the vision. That is, we too, GSK, want to deploy our applications over the web because we feel right now, you saw how long the gap was between versions of Instant JChem that we installed in-house. We went from 5.6 or 5.7 to 6.2, and I saw some ChemAxon people wincing when they saw that gap there. Yes, it takes a long time to deploy an application in our environment, especially when you're doing it over Citrix. In this case, this makes for quicker deployment, easier support, and when I say fewer desktop conflicts, I'm really pointing a finger at Java. I don't know if anyone's tried to do a deployment with Java over the past year, but my God, having to go back from Java 7 back to 6 just to not deal with all the security stuff was a royal pain. So I saw some head nods, you know what I'm talking about. And finally, even though there hasn't been a huge demand within my company, yes, it makes it ready for those sexy new touch interfaces. We also feel that it addresses certain architectural and security problems with getting access to the data. In particular, on Instant JChem, the problem of having several hundred people connecting directly to one database rather than going through a tiered architecture with some sort of a pool or data pool, connection pool in the middle, a web server that manages those. This just makes better architectural sense to have a server in between the client and the underlying database. One other touch point is that we're working with Schrodinger on live design, and in particular, we're using Marvin for JavaScript. You also saw Marvin for JavaScript in the compound registration tool. I guess that within the past year, ChemAxon had solved the cut and paste issue, and really this has become a very nice product. It's made it very easy to get Marvin to the desktop, again, without having to deploy anything special. And also, within live design, you saw bits of the library design that is used within the live design product. We use it for Marcuccian enumeration, and indeed, there's also development on the reaction-based stuff. We just saw that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. And just this, actually, starting within the next week or so, we'd like to start a collaboration on the move from IJC Web, or from IJC to IJC Web or Plexus Connect. Essentially, we'd like to take where we are today, and within the next year, within the next few months, do a gap analysis, and in the next year, get to Plexus Connect for the bulk of our users and get us off of Citrix. So that's pretty much it. You see the story. Began in 2009 with the desktop products and a bunch of the toolkits under the hood. Collaborated on registration in 2011. Licensed that library design tool licensed the library design tool behind live design. Say that quickly. We're collaborating this year on Plexus Connect, and with the hopes of going to Plexus Connect in 2015. Any questions?
The Spotfire integration of the ChemAxon tools, is this what eventually led to the lead discovery module that Spotfire now offers? Because
lead discovery is another company. That's PerkinElmer.
Okay. Right.
And that was in the mix. We had a tool before that wasn't quite what we were looking for. We still went with the development here of this product. Now, whether ChemAxon chooses to make that available to others, that's not my call. I like it. We can, but yes, there is another tool. It's made by PerkinElmer.
I like that function where you mouse over the data point and showing the smiles. So that's really cool. We encounter this type of issue quite a lot. A lot of time, you have, in order to do that, you have to carry out smiles everywhere, right? For scaffold hopping, that's very useful. So the question is for the ChemAxon. So you guys indicated this requirements, but then how do I get, the regular user, this is for CXN's question, how do we get that? Do we need to wait for another version to come up? Or
that's a very good question. We actually engaged ChemAxon services.
I know.
Yeah.
So you guys get it for free.
We paid for it.
I know. So that's exactly is my question. How do we get those goodies? Is it going to be version 14.5? Those are very nice ones. Along that line, you don't want to carry that smiles everywhere. But what if we build some, you sort of look up that smiles from a dictionary, right? So that's more ChemAxon's question. In this case, you probably have those smiles in that row, do you?
That's correct. So that's in Spotfire. So those data are local, in a local data set. So really, in the data set, there's smiles. It's called a custom renderer.
I see, I got it.
It's simply converting it on the fly to a picture.
Yeah, okay, thank you.